This organization's only convicted mutineer is viewed by many, justifiably or not, as the cause of our conflict with the Klingons. To see her avoiding justice does nothing for general morale. Why give everyone another reason to judge you?
Are you uncomfortable with the power I've been given, Admiral?
I'm your friend.
My ship. My way.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. We've got new characters, some hard feelings, some soft feelings, and an update on acting Ensign Waterbear. Let's discuss the Discovery episode,
Choose Your Pain.
but first, a spoiler warning. Before we get started, we need to offer up a correction. Last week, we mentioned that Commander Landry was the first known death by tardigrade.
I will remember you.
We've determined that this was a lie, or at least a mistake. Landry was the second on-screen Starfleet death by tardigrade. Additionally, Ripper previously killed a number of Klingons and possibly the entire crew of the USS Glenn. Now, let's get into some of the events and revelations of
Choose Your Pain.
Really? I love feeling feelings.
Speaking on All Matters Tardigrade, Discovery's crew managed to push Ensign Waterbear to the brink. Just as Michael Burnham began to seriously discuss the issue of humane treatment of the tardigrade, Ripper basically noped and went on strike, which puts the crew in a bind because Captain Lorca has been kidnapped by Klingons, and the clock is ticking. Eventually, the crew finds a workaround, and Ripper is released. And it turns out that this tardigrade might be a space-borne species, meaning that it can live and survive in the vacuum of space, joining the ranks of species like the telepathic pitcher plant, the junior species, and, this space amoeba. And Ripper can travel to any place in the universe without a ship. Far out, man. So long, Space Waterbear. You'll be missed. Right. So Lorca has been kidnapped by Klingons. While the crew is working to find a way to rescue him, Lorca makes some friends of his own.
Files! Who are you?
The name is Mudd. Harcourt. Fenton Mudd. Harry, for short. And I reiterate. Ouch!
Mr. Mudd is an old friend of Star Trek. Mudd is clearly going to be a fun character to watch, and maybe an important one too.
Starfleet didn't start this war.
Of course you did. The moment you decided to boldly go where no one had gone before. What did you think would happen when you bumped into someone who didn't want you in their front yard?
The last time a character told it like it was, right to Starfleet's face, was Quark.
What do you think?
It's vile.
I know. It's so bubbly and cloying and happy.
Just like the Federation.
But you know what's really frightening? If you drink enough of it, you begin to like it.
In this episode, Lorca spills some beans on his previous station in life as captain of the USS Boran.
We were ambushed, and I did escape. But I didn't let my crew die. I blew them up. I knew what awaited them on Kronos.
If this troubling revelation is true, it paints an even darker shade onto Captain Lorca. And yet, it fits neatly with his character's outlook on life and his actions aboard Discovery. And perhaps this even sheds some light on why Lorca made moves to have Burnham stationed aboard his ship. Both characters have done questionable things that had logical or tactical, even compassionate resonance, but ultimately were considered wrong by many. Someone apparently gave Lorca a second chance. Lorca's quest to win the war at all costs has led to a similar chance at redemption for Michael Burnham. We will see how the captain's character unfolds. Lorca is smart and tough, but is he redeemable? Is he going to be one of the good guys? Or is Discovery laying the groundwork for another excellent villain? We'll find out. Wait, are there 4 lights here? Lorca meets our new main character, Ash Tyler, played by Shazad Latif, a Starfleet officer being held prisoner by the Klingons ever since the battle at the Binary Stars. Tyler himself proves also to be tough and smart and convenient, Are we dealing with a Klingon spy here, in much the same vein as Darwin?
They don't like you, Mr. Darwin. I wonder why.
As with Lorca's redemption, time will tell if Ash Tyler is who he says he is. Or maybe this Tribble will tell us. Speaking of Klingons, it's time to spell out a theory about what might be happening on Discovery. So, lots of people have been upset about the new changes to the Klingons. Sure, they look different. They've suddenly looked different before, too. Big deal. However, Discovery has a real chance to link up with previous canon versions of Klingons. Here's what we're thinking. What if, when L'Rell mentioned that Vok must lose everything, what she meant is that Vok had to become an augmented or transgenic Klingon? Let's catch up to speed here. Klingons look like this. And they also look like this. The difference boils down to Klingon-human tensions in the 22nd century. You see, a group of these guys were illegally hatched and grown by a kind of ancestor of this guy. These augments nearly dragged the Klingons into what was essentially an internal human affair, nearly causing an interstellar incident. But Klingons, always fearful of outsiders, expected the worst, that humans were creating genetic super soldiers in order to conquer the Empire. So the Klingons got a hold of this human genetic augment DNA and created their own super soldiers, which was a total failure. The genetic modifications and a mutant version of Levodian flu combined and caused an epidemic, which turned millions of these guys into a bunch of these guys, which explains the difference in Klingon phenotypes that we see between the original series and Star Trek: The Motion Picture. So, how does the history of this future alien race relate to the newest incarnations of Klingons on Discovery? Okay, so we're really speculating here, so water bear with us. What if all those millions of augmented or transgenic Klingons that exist during Discovery's time, as they surely must, what if they exist as a kind of repressed underclass beneath the non-altered progenitor Klingons? In light of the Klingon augment crisis of the 22nd century, the Klingon species as a whole might be having an existential crisis. There might be cries of remaining Klingon. Non-altered Klingons might shave their hair and wear more traditional clothing and armor in order to accentuate their Klingonness, making them appear very different to the audience. They might view the Federation as enemy numero uno, because it was the Federation, more than anyone in recent Klingon history, that has done so much to damage Klingon identity. They have reason to hate the Federation and Starfleet, and picking a war with them makes some sense in light of the history here. So what does that mean for the Discovery-style progenitor Klingons? By the 24th century, the existential crisis has waned. Maybe the augmented or transgenic Klingons rise up during Discovery's time period and make themselves more prominent in Klingon society. And if that happens, maybe it might lead to a process of interbreeding between the transgenic and the progenitor versions that occurs over time, producing a more hybridized look. Or maybe the augmented Klingons are put down and survivors are left hiding or investing in some plastic surgery. We're not sure how Discovery is going to spell out the nuances of this Klingon dynamic, but we do suspect that Ash Tyler is a Klingon spy, and we know that augmented Klingons can disguise themselves effectively as humans, and we know that millions of augmented Klingons exist during Discovery's time frame. It is not impossible for Discovery to bridge the Klingon phenotype gap in this way. We'll just have to watch and see if this theory holds any ground. And as long as we're speculating here, is Captain Lorca actually Garth of Izar?
Lord Garth!
Back to the episode.
Choose your pain.
While Captain Lorca was busy making friends with the Klingons, Saru was left in command of Discovery, his first such moment of power. He butts heads with Michael Burnham over the treatment of the tardigrade, and through the process we learn something of his real issue with Burnham. It's not the mutiny per se, but instead Saru is upset that Burnham's actions curtailed his own ambitions of promotion. It seems Saru is a jealous little brother, which kind of fits his and Burnham's pre-mutiny relationship. And Stamets really shines in this episode. Maybe some fans weren't sure they would like him when they first met him a few episodes back, but in this episode we learn that Stamets has principles and he's willing to put his life on the line to defend them. He might be a little crazy too. All around, Stamets is becoming a very interesting character. Also, in this episode, we get a peek into the relationship between Stamets and Dr. Culber. For decades, Trek has danced around the issue of homosexuality. touching on it only briefly and tangentially. Eventually, we get the highly suggestive scene in Star Trek Beyond, where Sulu meets his significant other at Starbase Yorktown. However, that really isn't good enough for the premier civil rights struggle of the beginning of the 21st century. And so we get this. Just two guys as a normal couple getting ready for bed after a long, weird day in Starfleet. That's totally gay, and it's great. Thank you for watching. If you like this and other Trexpertise videos, then consider supporting the channel over on Patreon. It is the best way for you to help create more Trexpertise. You can find the link to our Patreon page in the subspace below. We'll see you next week. In the meantime, check out this history of the Klingon people and this review of how Star Trek has handled LGBTQ issues before Discovery. Thanks.
遠い将来を考えてみようよ。